Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Sorry it's been a really long time since I've uploaded a new video. Recently had a lot of crazy things going on. I just bought a house and a lot of different life events, life changes. So for those of you who continue to follow and support my channel, I really appreciate it. This really is just a hobby and a passion project for me. So it's by no means a full-time gig, but I do try my best to upload content as frequently as possible. So today I have a couple of watches in front of me from a company based out of Denmark called About Vintage. They're a microbrand that features a lot of vintage inspired designs in their watches. Here we have a couple of designs from their lineup, vintage inspired obviously, the 1926 here on the right, the Diver, and then their vintage inspired GMT with the orange 24-hour hand. So both really great looking watches, some interesting value and choices at this price point. And we'll just go through some of the specs and wearing experience of these two pieces. I do have to preface this by saying I did receive these two pieces by About Vintage. I do not have to send them back, so I'll try to be as objective as possible. But I will say that these really do provide some interesting value, and it's always good to have some more choices as the consumer, right? Quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing my Rolex Explorer 124270. Great watch. I've loved every minute of wearing this piece, and I couldn't be happier with this watch. The 1926 on the right here, this is their Quartz Diver. It sweeps like an automatic, but it's actually a quartz movement. So you get that nice durability of a quartz piece, but if you enjoy that sweep seconds hand of an automatic piece, you'll get that here too. So it's sort of like the best of both worlds. The movement powering this watch is actually called the TM1VH31. It's a Japanese quartz movement, and it has that nice sweep seconds hand, which is very interesting. I've actually never seen that in any other quartz piece before. Now you can see on the dial, there's the About Vintage logo. I'm not quite sure what that logo stands for. I think it's like the two A's, or About Vintage. It almost kind of looks like an L, which is interesting. You'll have About Vintage there towards the 6 o'clock by Skove Anderson. I think that's the name of the designer. And then you'll see the @C text in red and 200 meters, indicating the depth rating of this watch. Some interesting indices here. You sort of have these two inverse triangles at the 12 and 6 o'clock position, and then circular rounds for all of the other hour indices. And then you have a 120 click unidirectional aluminum bezel with some very smooth action as well. And you'll see sort of a lollipop hands, seconds hand ticking right along there. Very nice action, just a little bit of play, which is tolerable at this price point. This watch retails for $399 on the Bracelet, and this is the 42 millimeter example. If I had known about the smaller size options, I definitely would have gone for them. In addition to 42, they also have a 39 and a 36. And there's also a few options you can get as far as the bracelet. You can either get this very lovely oyster bracelet, you can get a Jubilee, and I believe there's a shark mesh. And of course, you can opt to get a strap for these as well. You have a very nice luminescent material used on the hands and the indices. I believe it's some form of superluminova. It glows in a green color, which is very legible. You have a domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. There is a little bit of a weird kind of a glass distortion effect here on the crystal on both of these pieces. In fact, I'm not a huge fan of it. It kind of reminds me of like an eyeglass. It's not the most pleasant to look at, but it does give you some really good legibility. As I mentioned, this is 42 millimeters wide. It's at a nice 12 mil thick, so it's going to slide under a sleeve very easily. 20 millimeters lug to lug. I'm sorry, lug width. I always get those two mixed up. And then a 50.5 millimeter lug to lug. Let's take a look at the bracelet. You can see it's very solid. It's a 3-link oyster design, very classic. And then you have a few positions, 4 positions for micro adjustment. It is a twin deployant fold over safety clasp. You can see a very nice milling here as well on the clasp, which is very high quality. On the case back, it is, I can't really make out what that is. It kind of looks like some waves or a ship, but it's kind of a nice little motif going on in the case back there. Perhaps one of the coolest features that I have actually not tried yet, and I probably won't demonstrate, but I think it's fairly simple. Oh, there it is. It's there's quick release spring bars on this bracelet, on both of these bracelets. In fact, all the About Vintage models offer this, and it makes it such a breeze to change the bracelet, take the bracelet off on the fly. Just popping it on the wrist real quick. My wrist is 6.5 inches in circumference, and you can see that it wears quite nicely indeed. Very nice thickness, nice and thin. You can see that nice distortion effect from the box sapphire crystal. It is a little wide just due to that 50.5 lug to lug. That's why I probably would have opted for a 39 or even a 36. I think would be really interesting on this diver. So very nice wrist presence. I like the classic clean black dial and black bezel, and I like the no date design and the symmetry on the dial. So very lovely piece. I guess my only complaint with this one is the case size, which is easily remediated by the other options that About Vintage offers. The clasp isn't super easy to engage, but it is very secure. Like right here, it kind of takes a little bit more of a tug to kind of get this disengaged, as well as the second piece of it. But honestly, it's not a huge deal. It's not a huge complaint. All right, guys, let's take a look at the second watch that About Vintage sent me here. This is called the 1982, the Gmt World Traveler. And this is a really interesting piece too, because it kind of harkens back to the GMT, the Rolex GMT Master 2 sort of root beer kind of design, with the Jubilee bracelet with that aluminum bezel, the bicolor insert, and then also the orange GMT hand, which actually kind of gives off Rolex Explorer 2 vibes. So it's not overly homage-y, if that's a word, but it kind of brings some different unique elements and kind of makes it its own. I opted for it on the Jubilee bracelet. You can get it on the Jubilee. You can get it on a couple of different strap options as well. I don't believe it's offered on the Oyster, which I believe would have looked really, really neat on this watch, which is kind of disappointing, but I think it looks really great on the Jubilee all the same. So aluminum bezel insert. You can see there's kind of some faded lume on the hands and the hour indices and the GMT hour hand as well, which looks very true to that vintage design. Aged lume kind of gets some flack from the watch community, but hey, it's a cool. I think it's a cool look. It's a very intentional design choice by the designers to really bring the vintage elements of a piece all together. So while polarizing, I think it does fit the look of this watch and gives it some nice warm glow as well. This one actually is a 41 millimeter case, and it's 12 mil thick. So it's still a very wearable size, and because of that Jubilee bracelet, I think it does wear a little bit lighter on the wrist. A little bit more of a plain case back on this one. It's just a polished case back with some text around the perimeter. You're going to get 100 meters of water resistance on this, which is very welcome. And the bezel action is kind of interesting. There's a little bit of it's definitely very resounding clicks, as you can tell as I rotate this 60 click bi-directional aluminum bezel. It's very secure. I'll definitely give it that, and it's very easy to grip and to turn. But it's not the most pleasing or luxurious action. I guess it does kind of go along with vintage vibes when watches weren't exactly the most luxurious feeling. They kind of had a little bit more of an industrial vibe to them. So that's kind of the impression that I get as I turn this bezel. But it's rotating and it's functional all the same. So this is a screw down crown. So if you pop out this crown to the first position, that's going to jump the GMT hand. So this isn't what you would call a true GMT, quote unquote. You can set your secondary time zone this way, but it's not a true GMT in the sense that it has an independent jump hour. And then turning the crown the opposite direction will actually engage the date change. So you have a quick set date and an adjustable GMT hand if you want to keep track of a second time zone. And then the final position will allow you to adjust the hour, or I guess the 12-hour and the minute hand. And then you can see the 24-hour hand will move in conjunction with your hour hand as well. I don't personally see the purpose of a non-true GMT watch. I guess it makes sense if you're trying to track a second time zone. You know, let's say you have family in Asia or Europe, you kind of want to, you know, track what time it is over there, and when you're traveling, you kind of just, you know, set your hour and minute hand and date sort of the traditional way. But it's not really a traveler friendly function in my opinion. And feel free to chime in on this, guys. What do you think about this GMT movement? You see it a lot on the majority of GMT watches offered. Even the new Seiko quote unquote Batman, the Seiko 5, the GMTs that Seiko recently released don't have a true jump hour function. I hope that in the future all GMTs will have the jump hour. I think that's one of the most useful complications, because it allows you to independently set your hour hand without having to hack your seconds. But let me know what you guys think. I think that would probably be the only pitfall for me for this watch, is the movement, the fact that you don't have the jump hour, and also just, you know, this might sound a little anti-quartz, but if they could implement some kind of sweep seconds on the second hand, that would look phenomenal as well, like they did with the 1926. I know that might be a little bit harder to implement, but it's not a bad look. My Seiko GMT SBGN 003 also had the ticking seconds hand, so not a big deal by any means. Okay, quick wrist shot, and then I'll get you guys out of here. Sits very nicely on my wrist. I love the Jubilee bracelet. I think it looks outstanding. It feels so good on the wrist. It's just very light and comfortable. That 5-link design just makes it very breathable, and the watch is very low slung and hugs my wrist really nicely. I would say in terms of wearing experience and comfort, I would take this one over the 1926 dive watch. But I think each of these watches really bring a unique value prop to the table, and it really kind of depends on your taste. If you're looking for something a little bit more vintage, like blatantly vintage looking, I would say go for the GMT. And if you're looking for something that's, you know, a little bit more sleek, a little bit more modern, even though it's called the 1926 and this is called the 1983, I would go for the dive watch. And it's definitely going to be a little heftier. So if you have a smaller wrist, I would opt for the 39 or the 36. But if you like GMT, or at least the look of GMT watches and more vintagey looking watches, I would definitely go for the GMT. I'll try to pop up some other wrist shots and some macro shots of these two watches. Like I said, I recently moved to a new house. I'm still kind of trying to look for everything. Things are just kind of a mess. I'm just trying to find where all my equipment and even my macro lens are. So I'll try to get those shots for you guys. Hopefully this video was a helpful look at these two very compelling models from this microbrand called About Vintage. Everything is designed in Denmark. I don't know a whole lot about the company history. There's tons of information on their website, I'm sure. And before we leave, I just wanted to very quickly show you the presentation box that it comes in as well. It's a very nice wood presentation box, and this is the one for the GMT. And these are all things that we look for as watch enthusiasts. You know, we want to have a good experience from beginning to end, starting with the box. Very nice sort of a faux suede interior in here with the instruction booklet, extra links, and all that good stuff. So anyways, guys, it is a very well put together watch from an up and coming microbrand. So again, guys, hopefully you found this video helpful, informative, entertaining. and hopefully it won't be another 2 to 3 months before I see you guys again. Hope you enjoyed this video review, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care and have a great one.